Good morning, everyone. We're excited to welcome you all to day 3 of the National Art and Health Week in Nigeria. My name is Kunle Adewale, and I'm privileged to be your host today. So today we are going to be looking at inspirational stories, just like we did yesterday, inspirational stories of advocates and activists, professionals, and parents of children and adults living with special needs in Nigeria. And this session is tagged Elevate, inspirational stories of advocates and activists of the children and adults living with special needs. And to begin today, we are privileged and honored to have in our midst Tobiloba Ajayi, who is a disability rights advocate, author, and Mandela Washington Fellow from Nigeria. Tobiloba has over 10 years experience working with various organizations in the disability management sector. She holds a degree in law and was called to the Nigerian bar in the year 2008. Toby holds a master's degree in international law. In 2017, Toby launched the Let Cerebral Palsy Kids Learn Foundation to promote inclusive mainstream education for children with cerebral palsy in Nigeria. This was born out of a realization in 2016 during our Mandela Washington Fellowship professional development experience that children with cerebral palsy were being excluded from mainstream education by the school system in Nigeria. To date, the project has provided support to almost 500 children and their families and enabled about 100 of these children access inclusive education while trained over 500 classroom teachers to meet the learning needs of children with cerebral palsy in the classroom. Toby is also a published author of 6 books, 3 which are part of the Cerebral Palsy Roller Coaster series, a set of books that help families navigate the many nuances of daily living with children with cerebral palsy. Tobiloba, you're welcome on board this morning. You could please put on your camera so I can spotlight you as you speak very quickly to our audience. So I'm going to ask you to unmute very quickly and I'm going to spotlight you. So I'm asking you to unmute now, please. Toby, can you unmute yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Great, great, great. All right, so good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Adewale, for having me. So this is, I always say that this is one of the hardest things to do when people say, oh, we need you to tell your story, because again, stories are nuanced, right? And stories have different sides to them. So, but today I will focus basically on my role as an advocate for people living with cerebral palsy. So, like I always say, an advocate for people like me. So 5 years ago, quite accidentally, I will say, I discovered that children like me were being excluded by the school system in Nigeria. And it was very heartbreaking because at this time, I already had a master's degree. I had published 3 books, and I wouldn't have been able to do any of that without access to an education. So I couldn't understand how and why school systems were excluding children. I was incredibly confused. But I was very lucky to have role models and mentors who said to me that this anger that I had at the time, that it was valid, and that it was important that I did not just let it stop at anger, but I let it motivate me to action. And so I remember one of my mentors saying to me, stop thinking about the millions of children who are being excluded and think about one child. Think about how you can improve the outcome for one child and go from there. And that was what I did. I focused on, I've always focused, anybody that has worked with me knows this, but I focused on one child at a time, at every given time. And we do the work that we do to ensure that they're able to access an education. And as at yesterday, it occurred to me that we had reached exactly 500 children in the last 5 years. And we have enabled over 100 of those children access inclusive education. Now, not um, this might not resonate unless you understand what cerebral palsy is. For those who have never heard of cerebral palsy, never, I'm sure you've probably seen someone with it and probably called them an imbecile. That's what we do in this part of the world, isn't it? Cerebral palsy is a disorder of movement and posture that affects a person's ability to move. So any part of your body that has muscles can be affected by cerebral palsy. And it is the most common childhood disability in the world. In Nigeria, it affects about 1 in every 90 children that is born in a hospital, which means that in Nigeria, we don't even have data about how many children are affected because you and I know that most births in Nigeria don't even happen in hospitals. They happen in traditional birth attendants and mission houses and churches. So in Nigeria alone, at least every year, we're diagnosing 50,000 children with cerebral palsy. So to imagine that these 50,000 children would not have access to an education because as a society, we make the assumption that they don't deserve to have one, and they don't even deserve to exist in the same spaces as people without disabilities, can be incredibly heartbreaking. So for me, I always say that one of the biggest drivers of an education for me and all of the things that I've done has been art in many forms, right? So the first breakthrough that my parents had in getting me to learn anything was to put it to music. If you wanted me to learn my times tables, you better make it song. If you wanted me to memorize anything, you had to make it into a song. You had to make it into something with a beat, right? So it was important to realize that art in itself was an educational tool, and if it was used well, then we could expand learning, and not just even for children with disabilities, but for all children. Every time I've shared this with teachers in our teacher training programs, I've seen teachers see light bulbs going on in their heads, thinking, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I think of making this into a song? Why didn't I think of making it into something that the children could have fun with? And so it's important that we realize that for people living with disabilities, art is not, art is usually, people think about art as the end. So you hear things like, oh, let him just go and learn how to paint, or let him just go and learn how to make beads, or let him just go and learn how to sculpt. And I smile, I'm like, well, that's great. Why are we only thinking of art as the end instead of art as a tool and as a means to an end? Art is a fantastic learning tool if we learn to use it. And if we will learn to use it greatly, we would improve access. And not just access, but reduce attrition rates and increase completion rates of children with disabilities, children and young people with disabilities in the education system. It's also important to note that art is also a veritable tool in teacher training, and I think that we need to also think about that, because when teachers have the creative tools to be able to even express what they want to teach, they're able to reach their audience better, they're able to teach better, and they're able to improve outcomes of learning for all our children, not just children with disabilities in the classroom. So, yeah, I hope that this has opened our eyes to the various ways in which art is a real part in the learning outcomes and the possibilities that are available for children with disabilities in our country and even beyond. Thank you.
That's wonderful, Toby. Thank you so much for that incredible powerful story that you've just shared. And I have a couple of questions for you. And I know more people will still have questions to share. What is it like for you growing up as someone with cerebral palsy? What was your childhood like? But I feel like it's very important to tell our story from where we're coming from and why we do what we do. Right. So what was your childhood like for you? Please. You're muted. Okay, so you're muted. I'm asking you to unmute yourself.
All right. Okay, done. All right, what was my childhood like? I like to say I had a great childhood, right? I had parents who believed that all children were children. All children deserved the same access to the same things, the same rights and the same responsibilities in the household. And so I wasn't raised to see myself as different from my peers or see myself as different from my siblings. I was actually raised to see myself as the same. So at home, I didn't think I was different, but when you get into the society is quick, to point out all the ways that you are not, quote and unquote, like they say, normal. So I know that growing up, people would ask my mom why she didn't have a normal child. It was interesting. And I remember growing up thinking, what exactly is the definition of normal? Who defines normal? Because this doesn't make any sense. But it was also interesting to note that growing up, children were the biggest drivers of my inclusion in society. My peers, once they get past the initial, what's wrong with you? Why do you walk like that? They get past it. They start figuring out ways to play with me, ways to
Toby, are you still there? I'm asking to admit.
So, as I was saying, so dealing with adults was worse than children, actually. Adults were the biggest problems of my childhood. They were the ones who would tell you, oh, you shouldn't try that because people like you shouldn't do that. Why are you even in school? Like, why are your parents wasting money on your education? Or, things like that just made it incredibly hard as a child to understand why people were just hell-bent on putting leads on you when you didn't even realize you should put the lead on yourself. But I was very blessed to have family members who constantly removed those leads. So even when society would say, oh, you shouldn't do that, my dad's like, yeah, right. That's my child and that's how I choose to raise her. So you don't get to tell me that my child can't do that. And so because I was raised in a household where the mantra was, you can do it, it just doesn't have to be how everybody else does it. Find your own way to do it. I think I've done that going forward and I've lived life that way.
Wonderful, incredible. So I'm also going to ask you this question. I'm encouraging everyone on this Zoom call to please drop your question for our speakers in the chat. So what was the biggest challenge for you as a young person, going to school, being in the community, and what was the biggest challenge for you, your biggest, and how did you manage it? How did you overcome that particular challenge?
I think my biggest challenge was society not expecting me to exist in space. So it was the fact that it was just hard having to defend my right to exist in a space. So let me give you an example. So my parents sent me to boarding school, right? Like, I don't understand. Like when my parents send you to boarding school, if you're on this call and you are in your 30s, your parents probably sent you to boarding school. Like it was normal in our generation, right? Next thing I get there and everybody's like, what are you doing here? And I'm thinking, what do you mean, what am I doing here? I'm here to get an education just like everybody else is. But that continued and it became very frustrating at some point. I got into the university and I remember lecturers, I remember having to, because was a university where you took an entrance exam and then you took an entrance interview. And I remember getting there, and it was time for my entrance exam was okay, but that was everybody, it was the whole crowd. So nobody cared. You could write the exams, and then of course by the interview stage, you've now started weeding out the weed from the shaft, so to speak. And it was time for me to do the interview. And I remember walking into the interview room, and I could see jaws slack, shock on faces, and it was almost like, what are you doing here? And I spent so many years literally defending my right to exist on a university campus. I mean, fellow students asked me questions, lecturers asked me questions. So it was the defending my right to exist in a space and defending my right to agency that was just very annoying. And at some point, it just began to wear down. Because people automatically assume that they know what's best for you. And so you shouldn't have a right to choose anything. Society thinks they should tell you what you should do, what you shouldn't do, who you should talk to, how you should dress, what you should. I mean, and I'm like, it got very exhausting having to tell people, look, I have a brain and I can't use it, right? And yes, I have a disability. It's obvious, it's in your face, I know. But it doesn't mean that I shouldn't exist in spaces. It doesn't mean that I shouldn't have agency. I shouldn't have a right to, my own thoughts and my own views and to make choices about the things that affect my life. And those were the hardest things. But again, what I did was that I turned it into an opportunity for advocacy. Every time somebody said, I don't think you should be here because this place is not made for people like you, I did what my friends like to say, I do it, and then I do it, and then I take pictures for reference. I remember being told I wasn't supposed to go on a university campus. Not only did I graduate, I went on to get a master's degree. And I remember my friends saying, okay, now you're showing off, because okay, it's not like you're going to release this master's. Now this is show off. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I agree, it's show off. But again, I'm just tired of people assuming that I need to defend my right to exist in a space. And so it became a tool for advocacy. It became, I started to understand that people were ignorant, and it wasn't their fault that they were ignorant. If people were not exposed to a setting, or people were not exposed to a group of people throughout their entire lifetime, they're going to default to what society tells them until they have a different paradigm. And so it became unconsciously my job to show them a different paradigm. And so most of the people that I went to school with, when they hear cerebral palsy, they think smart and intelligent. They don't think
Toby, you're muted again. You're muted again, Toby. Okay, you speak. We can't see you, Toby. Yeah, I guess maybe the network is just bad at our end. We can hear it very well. When people try to decide how far somebody who has a form of disability, how far they can go, and want to decide what they can and what they can't do. I mean, Tobiloba is one person that I have seen over the years as an inspirational person who has continued to break the barriers in disability space, and she has continued to thrive regardless of what our society feels about her. And it's very important to see all the incredible work that she is doing. I will still get back to ask more questions from her. She's back again very quickly. Thank you for joining us again, Toby. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, go ahead. We understand this is Nigeria. Go ahead.
Right, so that's how I stopped what could have been and what was easily a demoralizing reality from, stopping me from aspiring to my dreams. It's just realizing, look, people are ignorant. And their ignorance is not my fault, but I'm not going to let their ignorance stop me. So Where I can, I'll educate them and keep it moving.
You're done, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. I love what you said. You're not responsible for somebody else's ignorance of who you are.
That cannot be my
it's not
I
your
will not be my
responsibility.
responsibility. No, come on now.
So I was going to ask you, maybe you have one particular success story that you have recorded as a champion for persons with disability, maybe that you would like to share, like in terms of what's maybe one significant success you have achieved as a person who has continued to champion disability, right? That is one. The parent of the children that you work with and also in professional space where you find yourself, how have they received you? What has been their attitude towards you? What has been their attitude towards their children? What has changed in your advocacy work? What has changed? What was it used to be and what is it like now? So number one, your success. Two, parent and professional's reaction to what you do. What has changed? What is, yes, go ahead.
So I'll start from number two. So I'll take it from the back, right? When I started in this space 5 years ago, the predominant narrative around cerebral palsy was, oh, let us help these unfortunate children that can't do anything for themselves. And the predominant message that parents were getting is that their children were doomed and their children would never be able to aspire to anything. And that was just a general narrative that was in the space, right? And so it was almost like, how dare you even be talking about education for children like this? I remember that I was said to have been giving people false hope at the time because it was impossible for children with cerebral palsy to learn, not to talk of even aspire to anything beyond the life of full dependence. That was 5 years ago. Today, I see parents who are championing not just even education for their children, but for other children. I see parents who are at the forefront of saying, I'm not going to take this behavior from the school, they're not doing me a favor, they're providing me service, and I'm sharing at the back of my mind. There you go. I've watched quite a good number of our children go from not being able to go to school because they were constantly being rejected by school systems, to being in secondary school and acing the common entrance exam. I've watched. Just this morning, I received a call from one of our clients that we worked with 2 years ago, who had been told that he could never aspire to university education until he should go and learn a trade, but who really wanted to go to school, and so he came to me and said, everybody around me says I can never write right, and everybody around me says it's not people like me that write jam. Today he calls me to say, Ma, I just wanted to let you know that I've written right and I wrote jam yesterday, and that I applied to go to Yaba College of Technology. And I was like, this is the definition of job done. That somebody goes from having person who's decided to got to not only prepare for an exam, register for an exam, go in, take it, and then be saying to me, I can't wait for results to come out so that I can also do matriculation, and say, I hope you'll come. And I'm like, oh, of course, if I have to move my schedule around to be there, I will. So for me, that's the change that I've seen. And for me, the biggest change is in the attitude of parents. When I see parents who are loving their kids, irrespective of what their kids look like, I'm amazed. When I see parents who now are advocating for more for their kids, there's parents who now want more, who now see more for their children, who are basically saying, we'll do what it takes so that independent future doesn't have to look like what independence looks like for the person who's not disabled. It just has to work. And so for me, that's the difference we've seen, the difference that our work has made. And so when now I'm like, okay, my advocacy has continued to evolve. You see, in the first couple of years, it was, oh, children with cerebral palsy can learn. It was me trying to convince the world that they can learn. Now I'm done. I'm not even, if you don't believe it, go on. I mean, I'm done. At this point, okay, please, how many of my children are like, how many of my children are nailing competitions? What I'm looking at. Like, right now, if you are still asking me whether children can learn, I can't help you. You know, so we've seen tremendous growth in 5 years. Even with medical professionals, I remember when I first started, medical professionals had never seen an adult with CP that was cognitively not impaired. So they would, I remember having doctors say to me, oh, you can't have CP if you are that smart. And I'm like, okay, when do you need me to present myself to you can prove or disprove my claim that I have cerebral palsy? And now I have situations where it is, you know, parents are calling me from hospitals saying, oh, so and so doctor told me to call you. So and so therapist, so and so hospital told me to call you. And that for me is a major shift in even how the medical profession approaches disability management and care today. Before it was always, oh, one to help in fact, anything and that. And for me, that's a major shift. So I'm excited that we made that happen. So your first question, now I've almost forgotten what that one was. Well, okay, so yeah, it was a major significant achievement. I think for me, the biggest achievement in my work is the changes in the lives of the kids. It's getting those report cards and my heart just swells in so much joy and in so much gratitude, because I see kids who had been told they would never, you know, be able to be anything, do even better than I ever did in school at their ages. I mean, some of my kids, I look at their report cards and I'm like, wow, okay, sorry, I did not know this much when I was your age, but it's okay. You know, so for me, my biggest achievement, I remember, was I think a year or two ago when one of our kids topped the common entrance exam for her entire school. So in her school, she was the only person with a significant disability to write the exam, but she had the highest score for the whole school. So for me, that was a major significant achievement. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Very, very inspirational. And don't just tell them, show them. I love that. And thank you for your visionary work. Thank you for elevating the voices of children and young people with cerebral palsy, another form of disability. Thank you for empowering parents to stand up for their children. Because sometimes parents feel like they are the mercy of the school owners, so whatever they tell us, that is what we do. We don't have any choice. We don't have a choice. No. Now, through your voice, through what you do, parents can stand up and stop any nonsense, anything that does not really help treat their children with dignity. You know, it has to stop. And thank you for that. Thank you for helping. Thank you for helping children to stand up. Thank you for helping parents to stand to defend the rights of their children. Thank you for giving other people opportunity to be able to thrive regardless of what people feel like they look like, what they sound like. I mean, it's just what you do is just very powerful. It is very, very powerful. So I believe people, more people actually have questions. We'll quickly move to the next person. Don't go yet, because we're just going to ask you 1 or 2 questions more collectively. But now, this is just like for now, just stand aside while we just go to the next person. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Toby, for the incredible work that you're doing. We really do celebrate you for your great, your bravery, your vision, your faith, your tenacity, your perseverance, your resilience, your courage, because it takes a lot of courage to be able to speak up, right? And thank God for the kind of parent that you have, because I feel like your parents really play a significant role in your life as a person, because I've seen situations whereby parents get to hide their children because of what they look like. Parents try to, like, when it comes to issue of disability, because of their social status, right? They don't want people to speak ill of them. They don't want people to like, oh man, like you said, Omar Birun. like the label they give to children, the label they give to person with disability. So no parent want to have that label, right? They try to hide their children. They try to silence them. Even when visitors come around, they try to just put them aside. But I see what you're doing, that your child is your child. Your child is a normal child. What's the definition of abnormality, right? So your child is your child, and then being able to accept what you have, who they are, and helping them to thrive in these words that sometimes stigmatizes them. And I think that is just powerful. It is powerful. Thank you for all that you do. Wonderful, wonderful work. We'll go quickly to our next speaker of today. She's here already. I don't know, I would love her to put on her camera. Her name is Chigbu. I don't know if she can help to put on her camera. Amazing. My sister from another mother. Toby is also my sister from another mother anyway. So good, wonderful. Krista, how are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you. And how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing wonderfully well. You're looking great as well. Nigeria is really shining light, so much light on you. The country is not really affected.
Yes, so you can't complain.
Amazing. So I'm going to read your bio very quickly. So Krista Chigbu is the founder and executive director of the Irides Foundation, which was born out of our personal experience to bring purposeful living to child amputees and their caregivers. Through our foundation, Krista has provided over 120 prosthetic limbs to over 82 children across 17 states in Nigeria. Beyond the foundation's primary work of providing prosthetic limbs, Krista and her team advocate for the full integration of children with disability into society. As a successful social entrepreneur, Krista actively participates in other ventures that inspire society and works with founders and executive directors to scale their enterprises. Krista's work has not gone unnoticed, as she is a multiple award recipient, being recognized for her outstanding contribution to the nonprofit and social enterprise space in Nigeria. She's also an Acumen Fellow, a graduate of biochemistry from the University of Lagos, who kicked off a career in Procter & Gamble and rose to become a regional manager. Krista has been featured on local and international media platforms such as CNN, among many others. She is married to Zubi Chigbu, and they are blessed with 2 kids. Join me to welcome Krista. Krista, over to you, please.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone that is listening today and watching, depending on where you are. So let me just report Kunle to all of you. He made sure that I should work on a slide. So I'm going to be sharing the slide with us, just help drive the conversation that I'll be having today. But more importantly, I'm going to be sharing stories. Of course, Tobiloba, thank you for that insightful sharing. Even though I know the story, and she didn't go the story route, she just basically told us how she, decided to advocate and all of that. Thank you very much. My name is Chigbu, like you've been told, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about me before I go on, because it's going to form the basis for which, the conversation that we're going to be having today is all about. Pretty much, I'm a person of faith, and for me, it's not about religion. It's having faith in God and the existence of what God can do for you, and how He has helped me personally to use that to change my life. Also, you can see my beautiful family there. I'm a family-oriented person. I love family, and the family is huge as part of what I really celebrate. I worked for about 13 years. And again, that forms the basis of some of the stories that I am going to share. Like Kunle rightly said, African Voices. I was featured on I've been featured on African Voices twice as an African Voices change maker and an Acumen Fellow. I'm so proud to talk about being an Acumen Fellow. I have 2 books. I have the book, Irede, An Unending Story of Hope and Adversity Beats Down. Currently, I'm working on a book called Board Engage, especially for nonprofits, and it's going to be launching on Friday the 13th. I have a show that is called The Hope Grill, where I share the essence of hope with people. I'm a coach, and then finally, the Irede Foundation. And the reason I decided to make Irede, because it's basically the story that I am going to be sharing today. Can you all see my screen? If you can see my screen, you can just, put on.
Yes, we can
your
see
hand
it,
or
please.
something.
We can say it.
So 13 years ago, when I gave birth to my daughter, this is what the leg looked like. One leg was bent, and the bent leg basically was that way because she did not have a bone in that right leg. So the leg did not form. And also, she did not have a kneecap. So when you think about it, as you can see, the one that was rightly formed, straight, and the other one was bent. And when she came out, we were told that the leg needed to be amputated. And the reason why it's important to take you through the journey of this story is because sometimes, we just see the amazing work that, like Tobiloba is doing, Kunle is doing, and pretty much we're looking amazing, and they've been featured on CNN, but there is, a pain behind the story. And I'm just here to tell you that irrespective shame and guilt and everything that you have gone through, there can be an inspiration out of it. So basically, after about 2 years and 3 months, we finally decided to go on ahead to amputate the right leg that had the deformity. And it was not an ice in the park at all. It was really, really painful for us as a family. Having done the amputation, all that we wanted to do was just to live our quiet lives, no interactions with anybody, and just pretty much just continue to live that life. However, I'm sharing with you now, this is the baby whose leg got amputated. And this was, I think, about 2 years ago, a picture showing the series of the prosthetic limbs that she has used. However, what this is giving birth to, and you can see this prosthetic limbs, I will come back to the prosthetic limbs. And I said, this is basically the Irede story. This is everything, that Irede literally stands for. And her name is Ireoluwade, hence why, we called it the Irede Foundation. And what we do at the Irede Foundation is majorly 4 things. The first one is to make sure that we are able to educate the society about disability. Honestly, 13 years ago, when I gave birth to her, there was no one sharing their story. There was no one really, people were doing amazing things, taking care of their kids, even though they had disabilities, forging through and everything. And Tobiloba's example is a great one of that. However, there was no one to model after. And so really, the crux of the education bit is to continue to create education. Toby is doing that with respect to cerebral palsy. We are doing that with respect to amputation and the likes of it. It's just to make sure that limb loss is not the end of life. And I know that on a day-to-day basis, people are actually faced with situations that make them feel like, they should give up. If you look at the work that Arts in Medicine is doing, it's all around children with different disabilities, where it's sickle cell, whether it's, terminal illnesses, ensuring that they are able to still continue to live their lives to the fullest and in a happy way by continuing to express what it is. So that's what we do with education. The second thing we do is what we call encourage. And encourage basically is centered around the parents to ensure that there are conversations that you can have with somebody that has gone through the same journey. When people ask me why parents, it's because also you are able to comfort with the comfort with which you have been comforted. So basically, I've experienced, acceptance. I've experienced support of a network. I've experienced getting the right, hospital treatment for my daughter. So it's sharing that with other people. Then thirdly, what we do is what we call empowerment, which is where we actually give prosthetic limbs to amputees that are children. Because I've heard a lot of people say, Krista, why are you just giving limbs to just amputees and just children? And I'm like, the work that has to do with children is a whole lot, because they continue to change the prosthetic limbs till they are 18. We keep providing that limb for them till they have what it takes for them to now lead on that life for themselves. Then we have what we call engage, which basically is where we engage with government, is where we engage with other organizations and see what we can do together in partnership to continue to make this work. This is the logo of the Irede Foundation. You can see the two children with disabilities giving themselves support, network, encouraging themselves, and the ray of light that comes as a result of that. I decided to share with you the out on a limb work that we do, which, like Tobiloba rightly said, delves into advocacy. There's so much education that needs to be done. There's so much awareness that needs to be created. And my flagship person in this picture basically is the current SSA to the governor on disability matters. And we do this out on a limb annually to continue to create awareness, to continue to create support, to continue to engage one with another and let people know that yes, and I think it was Toby that said this also, there is a disability, but there is a lot of ability that is possible. I tease Tobiloba a lot, and not just because I want to tease her, but because it's the truth. How do you have a disability and you have cerebral palsy and you have 2 master's degree? I don't know. I have 2 hands, I have 2 legs, 2 eyes, no physical form of disability, but no master's degree. So indeed, the only thing that is stopping you is that disability that you have in your mind, and should not stop you in any way at all. When our profile was read, it was at 120, but we're 10 years this year, and we've given over 250 limbs to children across Nigeria. We've given, it's about, we are in about 19 to 21 states now where we have given limbs, continue to change the limbs for these children. And really, it's been an amazing journey. Before I allow for questions, because I'm also mindful of time, I want to share with you some of the things that I've learned through this journey. The first thing that I've learned through this journey, that there is nothing that is too much to pay to educate people around you. From time to time, my daughter and I have faced, discrimination. We faced stigmatization from people, even from the people that are supposed to be the ones to care for you and love on you and give you all the best of the support. But I realized that there's nothing too much to give, irrespective of that disability, in ensuring that you train people. The second thing that I've learned on this journey is that do not pity people with disabilities. All that they need from you is empathy and support. As much as possible, what you want to do is give support in every way that you can, remove the barriers that they have on their way. And usually people think that removing barriers for persons with disability will cost you a fortune. No, it doesn't cost you a fortune. The first thing that you need to do is have that mindset, have the brain will, if there's anything like that. I mean, people talk of political will and organizational will and all of that, but I think it's just, somebody making up their minds to say, this is something I want to give attention to then you begin to make progress. And then finally, for parents, don't let the disability of your child stop you. I mean, I remember the first time my daughter came back home and told me that, oh, our swim instructor told her that she couldn't swim. I think it just triggered something in me. And then I started asking the questions, what can we do differently? Based on what we can do differently, what I then did was to look for a coach that then started training her. Now you see her and you say, oh, she swims. It's because we did not allow that to stop us. She rides a bicycle, she dances. There is nothing that that person with disability can't do if only they get the needed support that they need. Thank you very much. I hope this has been helpful. I will wait for your questions.
Amazing, wonderful, powerful, inspirational, everything packed together. And you did mention that I have also been part of Irede. You did not mention that part.
Yes, 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 yes.
Way back. We did here together now. Right? We've been together and you doing an incredible work.
Yeah, and then last year together we worked on the art exhibition that we had with Kunle. Kunle gave us very insightful feedback on how we could use the art to fundraise. We use the art to bring smiles to the faces of the people that saw them and also educate on the abilities that they have, because you see the different children and the different expressions that they had through the artwork that showcased their abilities. So thank you very much, Kunle. Thank you for that.
Wonderful. Thank you for the mention. I will take it. I will take it. Yeah, I will take it. And you're doing such a wonderful and powerful work. You know, myself and my wife, before we got married, we actually joined, we were at Iride's work. I mean, that particular year, Alibaba was part of the people that actually came around to also join in the work. I'm talking about way back in 2000 and I think 2014, 2015, thereabouts, 2014, 15, 16, I think so. And
yeah,
I never knew I never knew I'll be doing so much today. But I just joined, I just came around to support the advocacy work that you were doing way back. And for me, it's more of not just appreciating what someone like Krista is doing, what Toby is doing, is our involvement. What are we doing? How involved are you in disability cause? How involved are you? So either you help to help them to share the flyer or volunteer or help to just do something, just lend your voice. I think it's just very, very important. You've shared this incredible story and very inspirational. I love how you told the story from your daughter and to how that has really formed the kind of work that you do today. That is very powerful. Not many people have the strength, not many people have the bravery when they see their children in that way. I would see many people who actually probably want to use their children now as an excuse why their life has turned out the way it is. But you turned the situation around to your advantage and look at what you're doing. Over about 10 million people reached. That is not a small work. That is a big deal, right? And almost about 21 states in Nigeria. Incredible. So do you have a particular challenge that you face? I mean, have you ever thought of giving up when you started this work? Have you ever like, am I doing the right thing? Have you ever asked yourself that question?
I ask myself that question on a day-to-day basis. I just had a session with Audrey last week, and it was still a question that came up as Mrs. Audrey, spoke with us. I asked myself, am I on the right path? So there are challenges every day. I've had the challenge of raising funds because prosthetic limbs are not cheap. Prosthetic limbs cost you in millions. So it's really, and we have, staff that we need to cater for and all of that. So that's been a challenge. I've had challenges with respect to, on this journey with even the champions, their parents, and how, the people that you're making, you're doing the good for, making it available, because sometimes you'll be shocked that some parents want They are selfish to themselves and they're not thinking of their children. We've had challenges with respect to staff turnover. And again, you can link that to funds because very few people, they love what they do. They are passionate about it, but they want more money. We've had challenges. You see, when dollar goes like this, the cost of the limb goes like this. When dollar comes down, unfortunately, they don't reduce the money and say, oh, dollar is no longer what it used to, it has come down. No, it doesn't happen like that. So there's a rise in cost of the limbs. And as a result of that, some of the limbs that we want to give and the quantity that we want to give, we're unable to do that. So government policies and all of that, all of those have been challenges. However, if you remember when I was sharing, I said, I'm going to link it back to my faith. One thing that has kept me going is my faith. The fact that I have an assurance in God that this gives me every time I just or parent or listen to a story, I just see how amazing the opportunity is. Yesterday, my colleague was sharing with me and she said, oh, we have over 60 referrals for children that need limbs. In 2-3 days, we had over 60 referrals. People were calling from everywhere, Ilorin, Ibadan, saying we need limbs. And she said, you know what, Crystal, this is overwhelming. And I said, no, this is the joy of what we do. Imagine that we're able to give these 60 children limbs. Their lives are changed forever. Their communities, their families are changed. And the nation is all the better for it. So yeah, there are challenges every day. I keep questioning, but we keep going. Like Gen Z every day.
Amazing, amazing, powerful. I love how you all just told the story in a way that challenges are everywhere. It's how we navigate, how we handle those challenges. That's what matters, right? If you do have questions for Krista, please do put your questions in the chat. I'm going to ask you, how have you been, because you are a social entrepreneur, so how have you been able to mobilize the private sector, the public sector? So, you mentioned funding to be a challenge, which is a challenge in many non-profit space. I know even this program that we're running it on a zero budget, right? That is not being paid. Nobody paid or gave us any money for this. So for you, how have you been able to mobilize the private sector and also the public sector for a course like this? How have you been able to do it? How has their responses been?
Thank you so much. Thank you. The first thing that I'm going to say is, if you're not following me, just go and follow me on social media. And then also I have a YouTube channel where I share insights into managing nonprofits and social enterprises. Also, like I said, on Friday, I'm going to be launching the book Board Engage, which I think is absolutely amazing for anybody that has a nonprofit or social enterprise and it helps you. And I've shared a lot of videos on fundraising. About 40% of the funds that we get at the foundation comes from the private sector. And I think that the private sector is one of the biggest opportunities, especially in Nigeria, that we have to key in. So I would say the first thing is you have to show your private sector person, and I'll come to governments, private sector person, really what value is in it for them. How does it link to their own goals also? So when you look at a lot of organizations, they have their goals, they have their plans for the year. So once there is an alignment, you have a probability of really getting them to say yes to your proposal. So that's one of the things. The second thing is, when I'm working with private sector, I try to lock down, do an MOU for like 5 years, 10 years, because once you lock it down at that time and you've an event, it just goes a long way to really, really help you. And then finally, we keep telling the stories of the work that we've done so people can get to know about you. There's no, today now on this platform, Kule has given us the opportunity. I've been able to share about Irede. So if you've not even heard about Irede before, then you now know what we do. Should you see anyone that needs what we're doing, then boom, you already can say, oh, Krista, I can match you with somebody that can donate. And then for government, what I see that is very important for government, and maybe Tobiloba also, you know, be able to say much, because I know in the education space that she works in, she works a lot in this, is government is mostly for partnerships. And they give credibility when the government is on your side for what you do. So when, in terms of working and partnering with the government, what we do most is to partner. So partner with agencies like LASODA, because we work in the disability space, Ministry of Youth and Sports, Education, Health, those ones that are within the work that we do. So they partner with us, they say yes to it, they come for our events where they're also able to publicize it on their platform. So that way, it gives the work that you're doing credibility. If you want to know about funding, how to raise funds and all of that, go to my YouTube channel. I have a couple of videos where I've shared about donations and fundings and how to raise money for your enterprise. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And it's interesting to know that you're launching your book on my birthday, which is Friday, May 13th. So you better send it to me as my gift. I don't want to hear any story.
Yes.
Definitely. So I mean, it's just good to know that you're doing all of these great work and how people can have access to resources to support the kind of work that they do, because sometimes people want to do good, but then how to sustain doing good, because starting to do good is not enough. How to keep doing good is very important, and you have to find that knowledge, you have to find that access so that you don't get tired, you don't drop, on the way. So I mean, thank you very much for that. If you do have questions, please just put it in the chat. We're going to go next to a parent, and I love this connection from someone that's from Toby, then now to Krista, who has a child that is she's not disabled, she has so much ability, right? And then we're going to another parent now that has a child that is living with autism, right? I love that, from cerebral palsy to the child amputee and the work that Irede does, and then now to someone who has a child with autism, right? So I want to see how she, as a parent, right, how she has been thriving with an autistic child and what she has been doing in that space. I don't know, and I'm sure she's here. Please put on your camera. We spoke earlier on today.
So, I think I see a question. Somebody is asking how old is Irede?
Yes.
And how is she coping with her peers? So I'm assuming that you're asking about my daughter.
Yes.
She's 13. Tobiloba Ajayi is her mentor. And how is she coping with her peers? I know that sometimes it's not easy for her. She's in the boarding house. So I took a cue after Ajayi and decided to also send her to the boarding house. So yes, sometimes she has challenges, but one of the things that's happened is she's learning on a day-to-day basis how to cope, how to, sometimes she comes back to tell us stories of people that are mean to her. I mean, just last term, she had a not too cool story in school because her limb got bad and all of that. But she continues to get support, and she's doing absolutely amazing. Sometimes when people tell me, I hope she's not being bullied in school, I say, do you bully a bully? So she's confident in herself. She's strong enough to be able to hold her own, and with the help of mentors like Toby Adenike, she's able to continue to forge through and go through she's facing.
Amazing. I love what you said, Krista, about having Toby as a mentor and having Adenike as Adenike, right, as a mentor as well. I love the fact that your daughter is surrounded by strong people, right? they're surrounded by, because apart from you being a parent, also your child need to look up to some people that inspire in one way or the other. And I think that can go a long way, that she's never alone. Thank you so much for sharing. And just stay before we finish. So I'm going to go straight up to our next speaker for this morning. She's here. I'm going to ask you to unmute. I'm going to spotlight you right away. Yeah. Amazing. Great. So today we have with us Esther Sure-Okeugo, right? I hope I did not murder the name.
You tried, but the E is silent, so it's Okugo.
Okugo, okay, like Adugo, Okugo. All right, yes. Wonderful. Great, wonderful. Yeah, so Esther is a disability rights advocate, and she is the founder of Haven for Autism. So Esther Sure-Okeugo is from Kaduna State, Nigeria. She holds a BS in Business Administration and MBA from the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Esther worked for many years as an account officer at the Nigeria Insurance Corporation, where she served for 7 years before becoming an entrepreneur and an autism advocate due to the diagnosis of her son, Ziza. Esther is involved with numerous groups and community which advocate for autism awareness and special needs. She is the founder of Haven for Autism, a foundation that seeks to provide safe spaces and vocational skills for children living with autism. One of the foundation first events was a highly successful debut at exhibition of our son Ziza Okugo's titled Eidetic Impressions, in partnership with Terra Culture and the Pure Souls Foundation. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are so pleased to welcome Esther to Inspire Out this morning. Esther, over to you, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Kunle, for having me here. I always smile when I hear people refer to me as a disability advocate. I found myself in this space. Somebody actually sent me a message recently, and I won't quote her verbatim, but something to the tune of, we tend to start causes based off of our pain. Basically, that's what she was saying when she saw pictures of my son and I at his exhibition. And that really resonated with me. Like I said, I just came into this space, not really when I started. I'm glad that I can be seen as an advocate. When I started, it was more of trying to fight for my son. So for those of you who don't know what autism is, by the way, my son has autism spectrum disorder. Autism is actually a developmental disorder that is characterized by difficulties with social interaction, communication, repetitive and restricted behavior. 13 years ago, my son is 13 now, I found out my son had autism. He wasn't diagnosed at that point, but based off of his behaviors and with a mother who was worried about the fact that her child was not meeting certain milestones, I decided to do some research by myself, and I figured out from that research on Google that my son probably had autism. I didn't feel that I should wait for anybody, and I didn't have time for denial or anything like that. I just took it upon myself to immediately start something, because one of the things that I noticed in everything that I read was the fact that early intervention was very important and would go a long way into helping the child thrive and be able to better manage the symptoms or the traits of autism. One thing for sure was the fact that I'd never seen any child with autism before that time. I didn't know anybody who had an autistic child. There was nobody for me to talk to, so I just had to take care of things by myself. And thank God, early on, what I noticed was that my child had highly visual skills. Ziza was nonverbal, completely nonverbal. By the time he was like 6, 7 years old, he hadn't spoken a word. That was one of the things that we noticed. He wouldn't respond to anything, basically the environment around him. Another thing that we feared was the fact that he was probably deaf. And to our surprise, after having tests done, we were told that he could hear perfectly. And so what was the way forward for me? I told myself that I wasn't going to be restricted by what society said. Tobiloba rightly said that most children with disabilities are termed retarded. Thank God now we are finding out that people are running away from such words. They are seen to be derogatory. So the fact that the child has autism, the fact that he's nonverbal does not mean that he's totally, gone, like he cannot do anything or he cannot achieve anything. So I told myself I was going to do as much as I can for my son. And yes, he wasn't talking at 6, 7, he was still wearing diapers. He had so many behaviors, he couldn't write, he couldn't do a lot of things. But like I said, I think a lot of times we just look at people and just think that, this is a lost cause. But I'm grateful that by watching him and seeing, what he was able to do basically at home, we're able to pick up on some things early enough. I had a lot of frustrations, especially with our country, raising a child with autism in a country that is uncaring and unwilling to accommodate people like my child, makes it difficult for them to function in society. What we hoped for was having equal opportunities in school, and then finding out that just because your child is cognitively behind, with a system a system that is so focused on academic excellence, I decided that I was going to try and see whatever strengths he had. I wasn't going to look at the disability, so to speak. I was just going to look at his strengths. I was going to look at what we were able to achieve, no matter how little it was. That led us to finding out on time, around, I think, 3 years old. I dropped him off at school, and when I came to pick him up, the teacher gave me a picture that he had drawn, and he said he kept crying. Of course, the difficulty in communication and all that, and he was trying to tell them something. He got up and he got a sheet of paper, got a pencil. This is somebody who ordinarily finds it difficult to hold a pencil and to even write. But they just indulged him, gave him a sheet of paper, gave him a pencil, and he drew something. And it took us a little while. When I came to pick up, I was like, what's on this picture? And we figured out that he was actually putting on a t-shirt that day, and he had a picture of the Angry Birds on it. And he had drawn exactly what was on his t-shirt. Here was what was amazing, the fact that, if I had to wear a t-shirt with a picture and I had to look at the picture and draw it, I had to be looking at the picture on my chest and then upside down as well. It would be difficult to be able to get that picture. And from then on, we realized that that picture probably came from his mind. He had stored that picture in detail. He had stored it in detail and brought it out as a picture and then put it down on paper. And after having 1 or 2 experiences with him as well, where we went somewhere and then came back home, and the next thing you find a sheet of paper, he had drawn something, we realized quickly that he had a photographic memory and was able to absorb things in great detail and then put them out. And so our journey began. I said, okay, Toby mentioned that her parents helped her to learn, and if you wanted her to learn something, she had to learn it through music. And I began to read about, are there any people who are like my son? And that's where the word eidetic comes from. The word eidetic just means somebody who has a photographic memory. So that became his moniker, and we started calling him the eidetic boy, which is also the handle for his Instagram page. And so we decided to use, okay, how can this boy how can we engage him? This is somebody who lacks social skills, as most autistic people do. How can we engage him? And he had so many behaviors. Lack of communication made him very aggressive. He just didn't, he couldn't get us to understand what he wanted to say. And so he would lash out in various ways. But here's the thing, we found out quickly that art was kind of like his happy place. He would pick up sheets of paper. I had to be buying paper in bundles and making sure that we did not lack pencils or erasers and stuff like that at home. And then he would just sit down and keep drawing and drawing and drawing over and over different things. Sometimes because people with autism tend to be fixated on certain things, focused on anything that interests them. They have focused interests. For instance, if it was the Lion King, you could draw Simba 100 times in a day, every day, different postures, different angles and things like that. And so I knew that it had to be something that we would push and something that will help him with. All the pictures that you see here are things that he has drawn. Going from crayons, we started to buy wax crayons, and then we introduced him to acrylic paint. We introduced him to brushes, and we quickly saw that art kind of became a form of expression for him. Like, so you have somebody who's nonverbal, and we quickly realized that, okay, this boy is definitely visual, and so this could actually help him in trying to communicate what he's feeling, what he sees, what is he trying to say something. And he started to tell stories with his pictures, and just basically, so anything he does, he shows interest. And see him, whatever Aziza does, I don't think there's a day that goes by that he does not paint, or he doesn't draw, or he doesn't sketch something. He's constantly drawing. That is what makes him happy. And then I decided, okay, a thought came to me. I'm like, okay, why does society stigmatize people with disabilities, especially with autism? And I don't mean to belittle anybody's experience. Autism is seen as an invisible disability because it does not show, physically. So you would look at my son, and the next question people ask me is that, why is he like 13 and they're talking to him and he cannot respond or he cannot talk? So they think they are looking at somebody, quote unquote, they like, okay, he's not acting normal. So what's the problem? Because there's nothing physically wrong with him. He doesn't look physically challenged or anything like that. So it's a little bit tougher because it's seen as an invisible disability, so to speak, until you now begin to see the behavior. So a lot of people just look at it when they start to act out certain behaviors. At his age, for instance, 13 years old, you would not see a neurotypical child behaving the way he would behave. And so I took it upon myself to say, you know what, every experience that we have, whatever we go to, I'm not going to hide my child inside the house because society has something negative to say about him. We're going to go out, and anytime he acts out or he has a meltdown, or they have questions to ask, I used it as a teachable moment. So I would tell people as much as I could, whether it's 100 times a day, going to the store, going to the pharmacy, whatever it is, anybody that I met that had questions, I took my time to teach them about autism, tell them what autism is, to create more awareness, because I understood that the more people understood what it was, the easier it was for my child and for people like him as well. And the easier it becomes for them to be accepted into society. And that's it. So one of the things I did was say, okay, let's take our interests and let's use it for social change. So I said, okay, how can I use this art? Up until then, I just had drawings and drawings and drawings of that he had done, and just kept them in the house. This time around, I decided, okay, let us put it out there. So I opened up an Instagram page, and the purpose of that Instagram page was actually to show people, that there's ability in disability, so to speak. The fact that my child has autism doesn't mean that he cannot do anything. The fact that he does not speak does not mean that his brain is dead. he can think, he can feel things, he can express himself. And so that was what the page did for me. And it was a conversation starter because people would come on to me and say, oh, wow, like who drew this? That's Caesar. And they check and they see that he's 13 years old, or, you know, from when we started the page, it was about 9 or something like that. And they're like, he has autism, are you for real? You know, so that for me was how the advocacy started. And somebody actually reached out to me and said, every time I would post a drawing, which was almost daily, like I said, he's constantly drawing. And she said, please, do I have your permission to do an exhibition? Are you just gonna keep posting on Instagram? And I said, oh, wow, I never really thought of that. And so in less than a week, we organized an exhibition. Terra Culture was all for it. Before we knew it, we did the opening, and then it was all over social media. And I was happy because that all happened April 2nd, which was Autism Awareness Day. And it ran for like 10 days or so. So that kind of like it's kind of like helped us to do what we really, really had a passion for, which was to shine a light on autism so that people better understand what it's all about. And you know, just creating awareness and acceptance and inclusion, especially in schools. So now, you know, we did that. It was successful. The first day of the exhibition, before the opening, like almost 70% of the paintings were already gone. I think at that exhibition, we sold about 50 of his paintings. And so I just knew, okay, based off of, you know, feedback that I got from people, a lot of parents were reaching out to me and asking, you know, how can I help my son? How do I figure out what my son is good at? And you know, questions like that. And I said, okay, you know, we have to do something about this. So that was what birthed the Haven for Autism. We wanted to do the same thing that we did for our son, the same opportunities that we gave him. We wanted to help others like him to figure out what their passion was. Is there any form of expression that they can get as well? Something that will help them. So what if school says that they cannot do math or they cannot do English? So what if they are non-verbal? Is there something else? And one of the things that I've told people after watching my son now is that I've come to a place of acceptance. We may talk about acceptance and advocating for our children, but the truth is that somewhere deep within us, we haven't actually also accepted them the way they are. I think it took me a couple of years down my journey to actually say, this is who my son is and this is what he is. So, and one day somebody actually asked me a question and said, Ziza has found expression in art and music. So what if he does not speak verbally? And that hits me and it got me thinking. I'm like, actually, I'm very, very okay with him never speaking. If he doesn't ever speak, I'm fine, because who says that verbal speech is the only form of communication? Art is a form of communication. Music is a form of communication. And I thank you for what Kunle is doing, because the art actually is actually healing. Whatever you found in whatever space it is, whether it's visual art, whether it's music, whether it's drama or whatever it is. And so that's what we're big on. And in that space, we're also having conversations with parents and getting them to also come to a place of acceptance and also to also advocate and be their children's voices. So I tell people now that Ziza he may not necessarily have a voice verbally. I'm his voice. His art is his voice. And we'll continue to speak for other autistic people. We'll continue to speak for people like him and hopefully get society to listen enough. And I find that talking to people, telling them about autism was always so tasking for me. Some were not really ready, really ready to listen. But the art just does something fantastic. I don't have to say anything. I just watch people just go around the gallery and just look at the pictures, look at the paintings. And that's in itself just, it speaks a lot. It says a lot. And they're asking like, he's 13, usually how does it work? Like he sees something and he draws it. And before you know it, like we're talking autism. And then people open up to me and they say, actually, my niece is autistic. Oh, or I have a colleague who has an autistic child. Please, can you talk to them? Can you encourage them? Can you, help them out with resources and things like that? So that's basically why we said, okay, there's a need for haven, and that has sort of like found me in places like this, speaking to other people and saying, so what, your child has, I mean, he's different. That's the way I see it. I don't see it as a disability. I see it as a different ability, actually. Not everybody has to be the same. I don't know what the world would actually look like if we were all the same and doing the same thing. The world is colorful, just like art is. And that's the way I choose to see people like my child. Neurodivergence is here to stay. Autism is a different neurotype, is a different way of experiencing the world. They have different abilities. So whether we like it or not, we have to come to a point where we accept that people are different, and that no matter how we term them or we see them as being disabled, we have to understand that nothing can stop anybody, no matter what your shortcomings are. You can do whatever you set your mind to do. I don't know if you noticed the picture behind of Ziza behind the camera. Anytime we find ourselves in front of the media doing interviews or whatever, he tends to gravitate towards the camera. And that's what I've started to do, based off of the experience I've had with his art, is to watch my son. Even in his silence, what is he saying to me? Even being nonverbal, he is saying something to me. And I hear him say, "Mommy, I want to play the piano. Mommy, I want to be behind the cameras." And nothing stops us, really. Once I notice an interest, I just move. I don't even waste time. As long as I have the resources, I find somebody who can work with him. And this boy has shown me that, you know, if you need to stay with my son, if you stay a day with my son, you see what it means. If there was a picture in the dictionary for resilience, that would be my son Ziza. Everything that he does in his life, he teaches himself. I've watched him teach himself to swim. I've watched him teach himself. I mean, even with the arts, he's self-taught. With music, he hears the song and he sits down at the piano and he just is able to play. He plays by ear. Something that his sister, for instance, takes 3 months to learn. She's learning a piece on the piano. This boy just watches. In 5 minutes, he's sitting down in front of the piano and he's ready to play, whether it's Mozart or whatever piece for you. He's there and he's playing it. So who says that, you know, that they are disabled? I don't see him as disabled at all. I see that the sky is the limit. There's really nothing that stops him from doing whatever it is that he wants to do. And I think that's basically our experience with Caesar, and how far we've come in our journey.
Thanks so much, Esther, for the fireworks. I mean, the passion, your tone of your voice is just very strong. And I love all of the things you've shared. It's just amazing for us to be able to be present, to be available in the lives of our children, to be able to help them navigate this life that sometimes I want to put them in a box and say, oh, they have this, or they are like that. And then that way, they are not able to express themselves. But thank you so much for all that you do. It's just incredible. It's just amazing. The first time I walked into Terra Culture and I saw all of the beautiful work, like, okay, let me go and find out who's the artist. And I saw, what?
That's one behind me.
Yeah, it's incredible. I was like, what? So it's just amazing to see all of the great things that you're doing. We are really inspired by your journey. And I was going to ask you, when you were informed about the situation of your child, what was that for you? Because one of the things that I feel like the breaking news, there's always that breaking news. It's just like somebody who went for HIV test and they're like, again, the announcement alone, and then you receive this announcement. What was that moment for you, that day, that week, that month? What was it like for you? Please just share very quickly.
It's the only way I can. It was a period of grieving, so to speak, and I can tell you that that's probably, we may say it in different words, but that will probably be the experience of every parent with a child like my son. First thing to ask yourself is, what did I do wrong? And then like I said, it's a period of grieving because for every parent, yeah, I mean, you are married, you've had children. I'm sure we've all sat down at some point and said, when we marry, when I have my children, this is what I would want them to be. I'll do all I can to kind of like, you know, put them on a certain path, and it's basically success. You know, that's it. So when you get a report like this, like your child has autism, everything has been taken away from you. Everything that you have aspired for your child, everything that you have prayed for your child, every plan that you have put in place for your child, that has basically been taken away from you. And I can tell that the feeling is akin to like losing somebody physically. It's almost like if somebody has died, because that's it, your dreams are just dead, basically. So it was a period of mourning, and then of course there's anger. I mean, I'm a Christian. I was angry with God. I'm like, why me? Why? I mean, why do I have to be the one to have this? You know, why does it have to be us? And it was, you know, we cried. My husband and I, we were just, you know, and if you're not careful, you also find yourself in a period where you totally isolate yourself, because again, there's nobody around you that understands. There's nobody who knows what you're saying. All I got, even when I noticed that, you know, I started noticing certain behaviors, and I'm saying there's something wrong somewhere. And, you know, the usual Nigerian thing is, God forbid, that is not your portion. In Jesus' name, it shall not be your portion, and you have to reject it. So it was like, the more I kept trying to ask people, like, do you notice something? People actually made me feel bad as a mom, as if I wanted, you know, to speak negativity into my child's life. So at a point, it gets you to keep quiet. So when people are around, you're like, okay, I don't want to talk, because then people see that all I bring about is negativity. And so you keep quiet. But after a while, I'm happy with the way I did. I had my period of mourning. I had my period of crying. I had my period of getting angry and lashing out, isolating myself. After that, I just, I'm glad that I was able to just not be in denial and get up and just tell myself, okay, now that the tears are over, it's time for work. You have, this is, and again, when you read about autism, you know that it is not something that is cured. So even when the person is 30, even when he's able to manage his, you know, the symptoms of autism, he still remains autistic. So it's never gonna go away. It's who he is. And so I told myself that you have your work cut out for you, and it's time to go to work. There's no time to waste. And basically that's what I did.
Thank you so much for your realness. Thank you so much. This is just very powerful. We're going to do like a roundup, a Q&A very briefly, but we want to go to the next speaker. Then 4 of you, I will put you together in the frame and just ask you 1 or 2 questions that we'll just close for today. I mean, thank you so much for your energy. Thank you so much for your passion. I mean, thank you for even, I know sometimes it's very difficult to accept what sometimes that light throws our way, and then how we now take that and how we're able to turn it around, how we're able to shift the table and say, okay, I accept this, but this is not who my child is. I define what my child is, right? And I see that, I hear that from you, and I'm inspired by you so much by your passion, your energy. And I believe that many parents are also inspired by your resilience and by your drive, by your vision for your son, Ziza, an amazing child, an amazing child. Wonderful. And it's interesting to know that Irede and Caesar are age mates. Interesting. So,
yes,
I'm going to talk about that. You know, this is not a coincidence in any way. I'm also born May 13th, so we have like 13 figures here in this space today. Irede is 13th, Caesar is 13, and I was born May 13th. Very interesting numbers, right? We'll talk about that shortly, right? We're going to go next to our next speaker right away. I'm going to spotlight her. I would love to see your face, ma'am. Don't worry, you're safe. You're very safe. You're with us. So yeah, I'm going to, fantastic. I like, wonderful. Yes, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Let me try to ask you to unmute, please. Oh, wonderful. So
good morning, everybody.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to keep my mask on because I'm actually at school. and any child can come in at any point in time.
It's
So
okay.
please excuse me and accommodate that.
No, it's okay. It's
Good
okay.
morning, Mrs. Mommy. Great to see you again in such a short while. I met
Amazing.
Mrs. Mom about 3 weeks ago.
Amazing. Amazing. So I'm going to introduce you very quickly, and we'll just dive into what you do. So our next speaker is Mrs. Doyinsola Jawando-Adebomehin. I don't know whether if I pronounce it well. She is a coordinator.
Jawando-Adebomehin.
So she's the coordinator of the Learning Place Center and also an NLP master practitioner. Mrs. Doyinsola is a Montessori educator, behavior analyst, a counselor, and NLP master practitioner. She's popularly known as DJ. She's passionate about special needs, mental health, and child development. With the experience of over 15 years and still counting, her name rests with professionalism in the mental health and education sectors, both Montessori and special education. DJ currently serves as a center coordinator for the Learning Place Center and as principal consultant of Coconut Spectrum. She's also a co-founder. I'm going to ask you to unmute, ma'am. Then maybe when you want to speak, you can just unmute you.
Okay. Good morning, everybody.
No, I'm not done yet.
It's really great to be here again.
No, I'm asking you to mute
Oh,
yourself
I'm sorry.
for the background noise.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for that. So she is a principal consultant of Coconut Spectrum. She is also a co-founder of SASIN, a non-governmental organization by a group of young teenagers aimed at providing a platform through which young people can speak about these issues affecting them: peer pressure, drug abuse, sexual abuse, etc., and learn to build steps to find solutions to them. DJ works with individuals and organizations to dismantle undesired behaviors, install desired behaviors, and uphold the development and mental health of all. Our favorite tasks include carrying out diagnostic and developmental assessment and crafting implementable programs to promote development for both the typical and atypical. She also enjoys training caregivers and parents on how to empower their children and what. DJ is a mother to several children and a lifelong enthusiast who loves laughing like me, learning new things, and acting. Please welcome with us this morning, DJ, Mrs. Doyinsola Adebomehin. Over to you, ma'am. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself very quickly.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was long. Okay. It's been great listening to the different speakers from Tobiloba. It's always interesting to listen to Toby speak. You know, I find her she's very good for my heart. It makes me very happy when I see her, and then the ease with which she speaks is outstanding. It was great to learn more about Irede. I had heard about it, but listening to it today helped me learn even more about it. And it's not just about the prosthetics, it's about giving the life back to the people. And then it was super listening to Ziza's mom. I had asked her some questions as well when I met her a few weeks ago, and I can attest to it because we spent some time together in the same environment, and his mom had to get some paper and pencils for him to begin to draw because he was already at that point of view. So I'm happy to be here. I'm an educator in the special needs space. I'm a Montessori educator, and by virtue of being in Montessori school, we have all children coming into our space. And we discovered earlier on that there were just some children that would come into the space and they had a different way of doing things. You know, they wouldn't sit still like the other children. They wouldn't listen when you speak to them. They wouldn't look at you. They wouldn't respond and all of that. So we didn't really know what to do because we knew about Montessori, we knew about child development, but we didn't know about that. So we started to pay attention to follow the lead, and then eventually led us onto behavior analysis, and we discovered that there was such a thing as autism. At the same time, we had those who were like hearing impaired. There wasn't much we could do for them at that time. We had those that had speech disabilities. We had those who had cerebral palsy and those with Down syndrome. And we didn't really know what to do. What we just did was have them in the environment and try to develop the social interaction skills and also modify the behavior. But by the time we learned about autism and other things, then it really opened us up and we started to embrace it, and we started to do one-on-one sessions with them a lot more and other things. So today, what we do is it's not just with people with autism, even though our center here was started for autism and other neurological disorders. But as time went by, we discovered that by virtue of the Montessori knowledge that we also had, we could try to reach to any child, and fortunately, we were usually successful because we learned how to break the tasks down and everything, and so everybody was learning one way or the other. Ziza's mom was saying about autism. Autism is a faceless disorder. That's one of the key names for it because you can't tell by looking at it. And the amazing part, the most amazing part for me, I usually say that God has a great sense of humor, is that most of the people that I have met, and I have met a lot, living with autism are about the most good-looking people you can ever meet. They're just handsome, they're pretty. There's always something outstanding about them. So it's a faceless disorder. You will never tell until the behavior comes out. When the behavior comes out, then you begin to think, oh, this child is just spoiled. This child is not fit to be here, doesn't listen to parents, don't know how to raise a child and all of that. But let's really note it, because autism is a condition that's characterized by three major factors. One is that there's a challenge usually with the social interaction. They do not engage with people. They don't do things like you and I would notice another person, go to another person, someone smiles at us, we smile back. They're not into that. They don't see it, so they don't do it. They're in the world of their own. Another is that they tend not to make eye contact. They don't look at people. And then they tend to have stereotypical behaviors, what we call repetitive behaviors. They could either spin around or clap their hands or jump or do one thing or the other. Any one of them is characteristic of it. And like Lisa's mom said as well, there's no cure for it. It's something that will continue to be. What just happens is that the behaviors that they exhibit can be modified. That's with autism. Now with cerebral palsy, what usually tends to happen is that their own challenges are usually with the muscles. Note, these people that I speak about, we haven't said that there's anything wrong with their brain. The same thing with Down syndrome, it's a genetic challenge, and they also evolve. Yes, their own learning, their cognitive skills might be a bit dampened by the condition, but basically their thinking faculty still also is in order. So having identified that most of it, and of course, we have those with the learning disabilities and all the other chromosome challenges and that exist, it hardly ever really affects the cognitive skills and the ability to learn. So what we try to do in my own space is we try to identify who they are, what they have learned, and then to also now move them on to the next level. And in doing that, we find that they may not settle down, they may not look at you, they may not take instructions from you, but when you get into a room and you're just one-on-one with them, they tend to be forced to do that. And in being forced to do it, they now develop the habit of looking at you when you speak to them, of listening to you, of responding. And then it now creates an opportunity for us to begin to introduce concepts to them and begin to teach them skills. And they tend to learn. Now, a lot of people look at people with special needs, especially things like autism and things. this child is not going anywhere. They can't learn anything. And that's because they don't settle down long enough on a normal day. Doesn't mean they're not learning. I personally have had a child in my classroom who, when you're teaching, the child does not sit down, continues to walk around, grabbing this, pushing that, and everything. And the moment you finish talking, ask that child what you have said. While the child is still moving around, doing other things, the child will tell you exactly what you have said. And on the day when they're ready on their own, they begin to hold up, red, 2 plus 5, this plus that, an island is. You just be so shocked that, was this child listening? So they have all sorts of skills that they come to the table with. And that now is what has born inclusion, because that's really what I want to talk about today. Inclusion is very, very key for anybody, even us as typical human beings as we are. Because the human being is social, a social being, there's a need for us to continue to interact with others. And with the people with autism and some other disorders, they may not interact either because they haven't learned how to, or because their self-esteem is so low that they don't think that they have anything to offer, and as a result, we want to shut themselves out. If this is the case, then there's a possibility that they're not going to interact. But the moment they begin to settle down and to interact, you will see that they have all sorts of skills that you can never imagine. I personally have a lot of links. I'm surrounded, I have a lot of autism around me. My immediate younger brother lived with autism, and my nephew also is living with autism. And in him living with autism, it's amazing the things that he does. He's a great swimmer, and like Ziza's mom said, most of the time they're self-taught. We were trying to teach my nephew to read and all of that, but he wasn't going to have any of it. And then he found an app that he constantly went to, and before we knew what was happening, he was reading everything. He was also doing number one. Now he's in like a secondary school, even though he's not taking all the courses, because it's not everything that we expose them to. For instance, I'm not going to put a child who is living with autism in a history class, because by virtue of challenges that they have with their comprehension, they most likely will not understand the dates and all of that and be able to put it together, except where they can. So we tend not to do that, but the practical things where they put their hands in, where they see, because they tend to be very visual and they tend to be very kinesthetic as well. And some of them have very good listening ears. They listen to something once, they get on the piano, they play. They get into the pool, they try some moves, they find this doesn't work, this works, and then they go on and they continue to do it. So because that exists, when we put them in the classroom environment, they tend to learn from the people there. Once you have been able to break the skill, the skill of them attending. Like I said, the ordinary did not look at you, the ordinary did not attend things happening around them. But after some one-on-one intervention, we find that they tend to begin to listen and they tend to begin to attend. So at that point in time, we introduce them into the school. So what we have, excuse me, is an environment, a school classroom, where you have about 20 students, and of the 20 students, 4 of them will most likely be people living with special needs. And if it is not cerebral palsy or Down syndrome, if you as an outsider went into that classroom, you'd really not be able to tell, because they're learning together. Of course, the way this can happen is by what we call differentiated learning, where everybody in the class is doing math, and then we could be doing like addition and multiplication. So where certain students are answering questions on 4,795 times 372, the person on the lower echelon who may be living with one special need or the other is doing 3 times 2. At the end of the day, if you do not call attention to it, the whole class is doing multiplication. You're boosting the confidence. And in that happening, they get more respect from their peers, they get to respect themselves more, and they get to talk a lot more, and they continue to give more and more and more as you need them to. So inclusion is something that happens very, very well in the classroom. And it's something that by virtue of different advocacies by people living with cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, that advocacy has helped the world out there understand spiritual challenges of that. There are people who have challenges that can be explained scientifically. And as such, people are now more aware and they don't tend to cast them away as much as they did in the past. You know, back then in the past, any child living with special needs was always hidden away. And where the parents, and those ones that were hidden away were the ones where the parents were strong. Because we've heard of several instances where they were actually killed. You know, you'd find out that this family has special needs. You ask the child special needs, you ask about the child, and then you hear the child has died. There was an incident that I heard about where the child had miraculously died, but the elder sister insisted that the child did not just die, that the father killed him. And it was an issue and went on and on until he was silent. But then, because of the, what's it called again? The stigma that was associated with it, a lot of people could not speak. And so the ones who were strong and who had a conscience tended to lock them away. Now you probably would look around and think, what's this? Almost
Mr. Doyinsola, we can't hear you again. I'm sorry, we can't hear from this side. All right, we are almost rounding up. I think that's very powerful inclusion when it comes to education for children with different abilities. And I want to say a very big thank you for what you're doing at Learning Place and how you're helping parents to find strength and support. It's just incredible to see all that you're doing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. We're going to round up very quickly. I'm going to ask our speakers for today to just give us their final words. I'm going to put them together. I want to ask Krista, Esther, and Toby, please put on your camera so that I can just spotlight you. And then we'll just ask you one or two questions, and then we'll just close for this morning session. Please, if you don't mind, help us to put on your camera very quickly. Toby, Esther, and Krista as well, please. Okay, thank you so much, Toby. Esther, could you please also, yeah. I can't find Krista on this call again. I don't know if she's still here. Okay, let me see. All right, okay. So I want to ask, what's your final words to parents out there, to people like us here, to Nigerians and people from around the world? What's your final word to be? Very quickly, please.
Okay, so for me, let's see. I always say one thing. I say, look, the next time that you come across someone with a disability, please check your bias at the door and see the person first. Because it's very easy to only see a disability and totally miss the fact that there's a human being there. So I always say, see the person first. When you see the person, then you can think of them as a person and not as their disability. That's my final word.
Thank you so much. See the person beyond what they look like. That's a very powerful statement. Thanks so much for that. Over to you, Esther, please.
Yeah, for me, what I'll say is, you know, in spite of anybody's disability, seen or unseen, they deserve to, you know, live their lives to the fullest. They deserve to live their lives to their full potential. So anything that you, whether an advocate, whether a mother, an educator, however you can, please do your best for the child. Look at their strengths. Do not be deterred by their weaknesses or whatever. Just keep pushing and try and get them to be the best of who they can be.
Well, thank you so much, Toby and Esther. Thank you so much for sharing today, and amazing speaker as well. If you don't mind, please, can you put on your camera so that we'll take picture of this, our speakers for today, please, if you don't mind. If you have I'm sorry. Thank you for that, Mercy, very quickly. I was already giving my vote of thanks. Just to thank all our speakers for today. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing us. Thank you for demonstrating that disability is different ability. I love that statement. It's about different ability, not that they are disabled, just that they are differently enabled, right? So I want to say a very big thank you to all of you. Thank you to also Krista Chigbu. Thank you to Mrs. Doyinsola as well for such a wonderful session this morning. We'll be closing now. We also have on-site sessions happening today at the CCA, the Center for Contemporary Art, Lagos, at Alagomeji. There is a Poetry Tuesday starting at 2:30 to 5 p.m. today. Also, there is an interactive podcast on mental health for a tired Nigerian artist. It's such a beautiful word. I think also there is, so this afternoon, we're going to be looking at a masterclass at 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock on journaling for mental health. It's a workshop by Amina Maikori. It's a workshop. So if you don't mind, if you're pro mental health like myself, don't miss it. Don't miss. This particular person charges a lot of money for teaching people, but she's not charging anything in this particular program. So don't miss it for anything, right? And also, there is a research presentation on urban design and mental health by our speaker. She's here now and she'll be joining us by 3 to I think 4 to 5. A research presentation on urban design and mental health. Don't miss it. And today we'll be having another session in Abuja at Third Pyramid Art Center, the art of food. So if you're in Abuja, Nigeria, you can just go to the Third Pyramid Art Center for the art of food by Alondra Dikisi, the founder of Artivale. And later on this evening, we're going to be looking at community project presentation. Community project presentation, and also in the evening, like we had last night, a powerful movie session, right? Don't miss it. Yesterday was fireworks, and then we've started with a big bang as well today, right? So I want to say a big thank you to all of you for joining us today. Somebody is asking for the address of the Alagomeji, okay? Okay, I think we've shared it earlier on. It's number 9. I'll quickly type that now. Mark Owen Street. Yeah, Lagos. Yeah. It's at CCA Lagos. Once you're using Uber, just type CCA Lagos and then you're there. Thank you so much for today, everyone. Really appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. We appreciate you. And thanks to all our participants that were able to join us this morning. Without you, this Zoom room would have been an empty room, but without you, with you, we had a great time together today. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye, and see you later.